to the Global Transformation Show. This is Connie, Avila-Von Leitner, and before we get the show started and rolling today, I just want to take a moment to wish everyone out there, all amazing moms, a happy Mother's Day, and that includes me because I'm also a mother myself, and it's a really exciting day for a lot of moms out there. So I hope you're having a wonderful time, and I hope you're tuning in to the Global Transformation Show as well. Also, I want to go and make an announcement that we are at the stage of pre-launch for the Global Transformation Show. So I am asking everyone's support out there. We're really excited about the pre-launch. I'm driven, and of course, we are loving all the mentions, the retweets, the love, the encouragement, and positivity that's being embraced by our team at the Global Transformation Show. Now, without further ado, I want to go ahead and introduce our star guest today, and he is from England. He is so amazing. It is Mr. Peter Cook, so I want to go ahead and welcome him. Hi, Peter, how are you?
I'm really good today. It's a lovely day in England, a bit chilly, but the sun has been shining, so I hope it's good with you as well.
Yes, everything's fantastic, Peter. Thank you so much for asking. And as you know, I love the cooler weather, so that fits me just perfect. Now, Peter, before we go into your transformational journey, I want to go ahead and let the audience know a little bit about you, because I know that you are an extremely passionate individual, and within these passions, I know exist that of science, of music, and business. And also, I know that part of business, some of your clients, major clients, and that is not mentioning all of them, but some of them have been Pfizer, the United Nations, Johnson & Johnson, and the Metropolitan Police Diplomatic Group. Also, you have been featured in some powerful networks such as BBC TV and radio, Bloomberg TV, USA Today, and The Guardian, just to name a few. I'm really excited because also I know that you have been for 12 consistent years, been ranked #1 in the world by the Financial Times. That is incredible, Peter. And as we know, you are the master of music. What do you have to say to the audience about that?
Well, I don't think there's anything I could say to improve upon that introduction, except it's Duke Corporate Education that were rated #1 by the Financial Times. I work for them, though, so I don't want anyone to run away with the idea that I've been ranked for #1, but the people I work for have. And Duke, of course, a very big corporate education facility in the US particularly, and all around the world. So that's actually amazing to be associated with them. So I'm delighted. My life runs in cycles of 18 years. 18 years in science, 18 years teaching MBAs at university, and 18 roughly years of running this business. So it is that strange fusion of science, business and music, and I think that actually makes for a slightly better sort of perspective on things if you've got 3 different sort of disciplines going. So that's what I bring to the party, is that sort of unusual crossing the line between arts and the business world.
I know that, Peter, you have a powerful energy about you that just beautifully transcends to the audience through your music and everything that you do. I know that you do work with 12 notes. Do you want to speak a little bit about that and let the audience know what that means to you?
Yeah, well, in music there are sort of I've just done a workshop, seminar, masterclass series for a couple of companies, Johnson & Johnson and BP, and we explored that very thing there. Because they were interested in working about creativity under constraints, and all businesses have certain constraints around them, whether it's legal constraints, financial, or whatever it is. And some businesses then say, well, we can't be innovative, we can't be creative because we have all these constraints. But actually the opposite is very much true. If you look at all the research on constraints, they're very much a spur to creativity and innovation. And in music, we have 12 notes in an octave. If I sort of demonstrate, perhaps, I won't do all 12, I'll just do 8 of them, if you're counting. So that's your sort of do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do sort of thing. It's 8 notes there. Now, so there's only 8 notes. Mathematically, you know, that's not a lot of raw material if you're thinking about innovation. But of course, you can make a lot of music with those notes. So, I mean, if we think about Michael Jackson's Beat It, that's almost the same song, I'm sure Michael wouldn't disagree, as the Beatles song, We Can Work It Out. And there's lots more you could follow with. So actually, with just a small number of raw materials, albeit constraints, one can make absolutely tons of music. And I think business leaders need to think about constraints not as obstacles, but as things to challenge them. I think all successful people use constraints rather like people working in a theatre. You know, if someone's put the chair out on the stage and it shouldn't be there, rather than think, well, I can't make the show go on, the successful actor uses the obstacle as part of the show. And I think that's what business leaders do very much. They use constraints not as obstacles, but as a spur to think, well, I'm going to get round that. And you look at great examples of people that have used constraints throughout the ages in this way. The chap who thought of the Dyson vacuum cleaner, he was hoovering his room one day and realised that the hoover didn't suck. And rather than just sort of throwing it away, he took it apart, and the next thing, 15 years later, he's got a new company that has overtaken Hoover in some ways. And the 3M Post-it note is another good example of a glue that didn't stick. But someone didn't stop there. They went on to think, well, what could we use this obstacle for? So it's very much like the sort of in the theatre where you use an obstacle to actually spur your creativity and innovation. So that's what I would say about constraints and creativity.
Yes, and I know that you, Peter, like to mix business intelligence with the power of music. Business is one of your strengths as well, and you've utilized music to allow whoever's around you in that environment in business. How does that translate to who you're working with, Peter, when it comes to business?
Well, I've had people say to me, well, surely, Peter, rock music, it doesn't travel the world and people in different countries wouldn't understand what you're talking about. Actually, the reverse is true. I'm really rather disappointed that business leaders sometimes can sing you the words of Bohemian Rhapsody, but if you ask them what world great authors on business, what their lyrics are, like Peter Drucker or Tom Peters and these sort of people, they don't know what these people, they haven't read their books, but they can sing the words of a song that's nearly 40 years old. And I think there's something magical about how rhythm and lyrics come together that sort of stick in our minds better. So even at a trivial level, I think music helps us remember things, and I think the business sometimes isn't quite as interesting as music. And I've had lots of senior people around the world sort of, they don't really want me to set their mission statement to music, but they think about how can we present our ideas powerfully in ways that are almost like something terribly memorable and which is meaningful as well. So I do think there's something to be said about that. And oddly enough, wherever you go in the world, people actually do know music perhaps a little better than business. So I think actually business people have got to catch up with making their messages stick just as well as that sort of pop song that you can't get out of your ear. So that, I think there's something there actually. I can't prove it, but only empirically through the numbers of thousands of people that say I'm onto something here. but I haven't produced an academic paper with evidence to produce this as yet.
Well, we all know I'm one of your biggest fans, Peter, and I myself, I study business, but I also have a background in music because I traveled and started singing at the age of 5 years old, and also had an instructor teach me piano. So as you said, there's a lot to be said about that, because these things did bring about tremendous amount of focus, and it translated into the business world and my leadership today. There's a lot of things that music has done for me in particular, and when it comes to business as well. So I'm also very happy that you've expressed that message to business people out there, but also the audience, on how music does relate, and there is something to be said when it comes to music and, you know, the connection when it comes to business as well, because I have experienced that myself. I know that you are the master of music, and there's a lot to be said in that just in itself, but we are going to learn a lot about you today on the show, and I'm really excited. I know that there's a story that you mentioned to me, Peter, about someone who was so greatly inspired by you that they invited you to a wedding. So do you want to talk a little bit about that, because that really says a lot about who you are and difference that you are making out there, not just in business, but the experience of business and music together combined.
It's not surprising to be invited to a wedding by your friends, I think, but this wasn't the situation. If I sort of tell the story, I used to teach MBAs for sort of about 18 years for a business school in this country, and we had this wonderful program on creativity and innovation. And it wasn't just teaching on two-dimensional boxes and all the usual things you get in an MBA. It was based on real experience-based learning. People did things in the 4 days. They sort of really had a wonderful time all through the day and most of the night as well. I mean, we worked like Trojans. And there was this guy, he's become a poet since, and but at the time he was really lyrical. And he just kind of got this stuff from me particularly well. I mean, the others did as well, but he particularly sort of, and we ended up writing songs on the course about all manner of things. And I think we did a mashup of a Prince song as well, but that's another story for another time. And then about 7 years went by, and I hadn't really heard anything much from him. He passed the course, and, you know, he was a great student, all of that, but there was nothing to pick between him and the others. And then sort of out of the blue, he invited me to his wedding. And I was a bit astonished. I mean, I sort of thought, well, perhaps hasn't he got enough people to go, and does he need an extra person? But I was slightly stunned, because, you know, I just didn't really sort of expect that to happen. And I wasn't able to go anyway, but sometime later I sort of asked him about it. And he said that apparently I'd sort of inspired a great deal. And he said he wanted to bring for his wedding together the people that had really affected his life. And apparently I had been one of those. And it was something of a surprise, I have to say. And in fact, I was with him last week because to sort of make up for not being able to show up at the wedding, we've started to sort of see one another and his wife. And so much so that last year I persuaded him to sing on a rock song about the economy. He works at a bank, and I needed a banker who could sing, and so he sang on a song called Fiscal Cliff, which was produced by Ozzy Osbourne's former guitarist Bernie Tormey. So we had this very strange day out together, writing and recording, and he's such a lovely guy. And I think actually the other thing about music, which we may come on to in terms of transformation, if you're going to be a great leader, you have to really be authentic. And I think this guy is authentic through and through. And I've done some interviews just recently with people like Roberta Flack, And they always mention the difference between musicians and perhaps who are really successful is being themselves and not trying to be someone else. And I think this guy actually has that in spades. But I was just so surprised that someone had been with for 2 or 3 days on an MBA course would bring me to theirs as one of the significant people to their wedding. It just comes as a great surprise.
Well, I think it's absolutely amazing. I know what the audience doesn't know is that you ended up not showing up to the wedding, but not because you didn't want to, but because you felt, this was something personal, something intimate that should be shared with, his close family and friends. But yet again, Peter, what an honor, for this gentleman to invite you to his wedding based on his experience and his connection with you that he had. And I think that's absolutely wonderful. Now, Peter, I know that you've collaborated and been part of the journey of many of the greats out there. And he's mentioned one of them, which is Ozzy Osbourne. I know Anastasia is one of them. Celine Dion. Can you tell our audience a little bit of what those experiences have been like for you? And since you are the master of music, can you let us know if there's anything that they have brought to the table to inspire you as well when it comes to music?
It's my bass player that has done the work specifically with Anastasia and Celine Dion. My recent experience, as we may come on to, is I was absolutely had the evening of my life recently interviewing Roberta Flack, AC/DC's drummer. But coming to those other two, Anastasia is a fascinating guy. I have a second-hand story from this bass player friend of mine who has worked with her. And he was working in London, and as a session musician, you never ask a star for a favour because, you're there to sort of do the work, clean up as quickly as possible and then go home. That you're there because you're reliable. You're not there to sort of take albums in for your friends and get them signed or anything like this. So pretty well most session musicians would tell you this. They never do any favours for their friends. They get paid for being reliable and being able to produce just what's required, just like that. And so he'd never done anything like this, but his daughter was a real big fan of Anastasia. And so on the particular day he was up there, he'd taken in a magazine and hoping that he might be able to do it over lunchtime, maybe just get it signed. So he asked her, he said, my daughter's about 13, would you mind? And I think this really shows the quality of emotional intelligence in leaders. Because Anastasia didn't just say, oh yeah, I'll sign that. What she said was, okay, have you got any other children? And he said, well, I've got a son. He's about, I think he's about 10 at the time. And so Anastasia said, okay, fine, so just hang on a moment. And so she walked off down London into Tesco's, the supermarket, and bought another magazine and brought it back, and then something suitable for a boy of his age, and signed both of them. I mean, she's a busy woman. She doesn't need to go out in her dark glasses to Tesco's to buy a magazine, but she does this, and I think that is just so telling in terms of an artist that has emotional intelligence. Prince is very much like that as well. There are some artists and some leaders that sort of don't see their impact on the world around them. And so Anastasia is not just living in her own bubble. She's thinking about, the sort of, his connections and his family in this case, and takes care to go and do the right thing. And I think Prince does that on stage as well. We could maybe come on to that. But I think that's such a telling story about an emotionally intelligent leader. And I think all business leaders can learn from that. If they're going to transform, they have to connect rather than live in their own planet and stratosphere. And I think great leaders do exactly what she did to sort of read the person in front of her, see what was behind that, and ask a couple of questions, and then go and do something that was uncommonly brilliant.
Yes, absolutely. I like how you express that, and how wonderful to know that there's amazing artists out there, such as Anastasia, as you mentioned, that do this, that have that emotional connection within the leadership. You know, it's not like you just mentioned right now. It's not just about being an artist and being in their own little world, in their own little bubble. It's much more than that, and it's so wonderful to see that there are incredible artists out there that do go out of their way and, you know, resonate with those around them, the energy, the connection, as you said, and that in itself transforms others. Their actions, what they do, transforms the lives of others, and just these things alone can make an incredible difference and can influence those that are around them as artists, because many times, as you know, Peter, people out there, fans across the globe, get very starstruck by, you know, artists, musicians, celebrities, things of that nature, and it's always so wonderful to see how people can actually experience transformation by having these types of connections and experiences, don't you think? I mean, we need to see more of that. Is there anybody else that you've experienced this with other than Prince and Anastasia? Who else can you think of that, you know, has had that connection with, emotional connection with those around them?
Well, just really recently, so I was privileged to interview Roberta Flack in London the other week, and she has that absolute sense of, in the room, she may be really surrounded by thousands of people, or hundreds of people in this case, but when she's talking to you, it seems like you're the only person in the room. And that connectivity that she has, and what a beautiful grace and wit. There is an interview on YouTube with her, which we've just put out. But she's not the youngest person on the planet anymore. But my goodness, her ability to connect with wit and grace, and she has that as well. I think Bob Geldof also, who I've met a couple of times, has that power of emotion to reach people. On stage, I would, and there's plenty of business leaders I could name, but they're probably not people that necessarily people would know around the world. But coming to Prince, I think that's a particular interesting example, because if you want to contrast, say, Mick Jagger, I mean, Mick Jagger is fine, he's a great singer and all of that, but Mick Jagger does not go to the back of the stage when he's backing another artist. He is the singer. So, you know, he's the archetypal singer that really is just pushing out into the audience. I've never seen, and Prince and Mick Jagger have got massive egos, but when Prince is playing with someone like Chaka Khan, he goes to the back of the stage almost like he's a session musician, just, you know, serving her while she does her thing. And I don't think you see the average singer doing that. I think Mick Jagger, bless him, he probably doesn't do the sort of backstage role as well. He is a front person, and you consider the size of Prince's ego and his ability to manage that and sort of say, I need to be behind. I think that's extremely rare, and I think, again, leaders in business need to know when they need to push out and give a presentation, and when they need to facilitate and just be supportive. I think it's what the Professor Charles Handy, one of our management philosophers over here from Ireland, he talks about upside down leadership. That's where, in a sense, you're a servant for some of the time. I think Prince really understands that, but possibly some rock stars, the size of that ego prevents them from maybe being a servant leader. And I think all transformers in business need to understand about being at the front of the stage and behind, and that's the parallel in music for me.
I just heard a key word right now that's really resonated, and I think with the audience as well, and that is a servant leader. And I think that's very necessary. That is part of what transformation needs to take place including the entertainment industry, including rock stars, celebrities, everyone out there. This is exceptional. I think being a servant leader is necessary in business, in all areas of business, and I'm so happy to know that you are relating this message to everyone out there and the audience. I know, Peter, that you are very special in the sense that, like you said, you demonstrated the importance of connection and working with bands and musicians and artists. I know one of the things that you have suggested is that bands really listen to each other. Can you express more about what you mean when you say that?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I'm not going to be a very good model in doing this right now because I'm speaking at you, to you, with you, and I'm using my mouth in not the same proportion as my ears, but we have two ears and one mouth, and I think great leaders use them in that proportion, and great musicians use them in that proportion as well. So I've worked. If I have a bit of time off during the week, I like to go out jamming with people and play, you know, whatever music we're doing. I like to mix with people that I don't know, because that improves your performance greatly, because you have to sort of work out how you can collaborate quickly. There's no spreadsheet, no plan. So it's really great to go out jamming with people you don't know. And you see them fall into, well, there's not two camps, but just for the sake of explanation, there are two camps of jammers. There are the ones that live inside their head and don't pay attention to the rest of the band, and there are the others that listen really well, all around. And actually last week I was at a jam, and there was a rather nervous drummer who I feel he probably does live a bit inside his own head, and he asked us to play a song, and at the end of the song the band gave him a very clear signal that the end had come. But he was still playing. In fact, he was still playing when I walked off and faced the band, and I got the bass player to come off as well. So at the end of it, there were no instruments playing. He was still drumming without realising that we'd all left. And it was, I mean, the audience thought it was hilarious. And I said, "We have done," on the microphone. I gave him a very clear signal, but he was just in here. But the people who are brilliant, they notice little things. I have a colleague in the US called Dr. Russ Derrickson, who we're writing a book together, and he's a jazz drummer, and he calls this, he has specific names for sort of being able to work across these fields, and he talks about transdisciplinarity and various other things. He's an academic, but he's also a jazz drummer, and the importance of paying attention to very subtle signals that people give, and then being able to turn the direction of a performance. This is particularly noticeable in jazz, not so much in rock music, which tends to be, you know, a performance. But even rock people do jam and improvise within constraints. So in the blues, you know, and often this stuff is done through quite subtle eye movements. For example, the drummer, you know, is unable to send a memo to the guitarist to tell him to change pitch or speed, because he's drumming. So it's much harder than in business. All you can do is eye movements, you know, nodding your head, maybe tapping your head. In jazz, often people will do this. It's called the head. You play the motif of the song. You sometimes see someone doing that. Say we're going back to the beginning, as it were. So there are sort of hand signs really, but sort of just using your eyes and subtle movements. And business people find it very hard to organise change without emails, long documents, spreadsheets, and so on. So actually you can learn a lot about communication by watching a really good band that's jamming together and seeing how leadership passes around the band. So there isn't a conductor usually in a rock band or a jazz band. Leadership is essentially distributed across the band. I think that's another interesting parallel, is how you distribute leadership. And you can learn a lot by using these two things, and giving signals. Prince, again, is a master of giving signals to the band to change direction. He borrowed this from jazz, but he'll often go, on the one, bass. And then suddenly the whole band cut out, and it's the bass player's turn to do something interesting. And he rehearses them so hard. You know, they have a repertoire of 300 songs. So that, and then he throws that away on an evening because he fancies doing something else. You can only be that good at improvising if you have laid down all of that preparation. So I think spontaneity and preparation are actually bedfellows. They're not separates or exclusives.
Oh, I like that, Peter. I really like that because actually, I'm actually very spontaneous in everything that I do. Even when people come into my show, I like to just allow, you know, my guest and for things to just kind of flow, be spontaneous, but at the same time, as you said, preparation is key, of course, number one. But I love that spontaneity that comes with the energy. And it's interesting how we see this, you know, happening even with artists and performances and how they prepare. And I'm glad you're mentioning that. That's something that I'm learning as well from you as to what artists do when they're on stage and how they are, you know, their signals actually work as a leadership. They really take that into their music, into their performance, and that is very important in any type of business as well. Now, Peter, I know that you're going to take a little bit of time to play for the audience. Is there something in particular that you want to perform today for everyone out there?
Well, I haven't got a set piece. What I did do, since I thought we might talk about improvisation, one of the simplest ways to get people to improvise, and we do this in our business seminars, is to get them to improvise around a very simple structure. One of the simplest structures in music is the 12-bar blues. So, and you know, the blues in the traditional blues, it goes something like this. You know, woke up this morning, you know, something terrible happens next, and you know, usually gets worse. But of course, the blues is a cathartic release form. So I'm not in business. It's more like woke up this morning, the server was down. Is this sort of IT blues that, and we've done sort of we get sometimes people to release, you know, their issues, problems, and opportunities through writing a simple song like that. But I'm not a bad singer, but I'm not going to sing over Google Plus. But what I have done, in the sense of prepared spontaneity, I've got some machinery down here that means I can have a whole band in my room here because it's just me, so I haven't got a rock band. But I have already laid down 3 chords to save you waiting for me to do it. So I thought I might actually just show you how improvisation in the blues sort of works. So I'll play some of it live, but most of it I'll have laid down on this marvellous piece of technology that I've got sitting below my feet, if you don't mind. And if you want to sing and say, woke up this morning, you know, the server was down, then I'll allow you to do that. I just need to do a minor bit of rearranging.
I can't wait to listen to you. And as you said, you're by yourself, but you got a bit of technology under your feet to help you.
We got a bit of technology, and I happen to have this guitar. This is the Fender Stratocaster guitar, one of the sort of main sort of types of guitars in the world. I'm not going to go through a guitar lecture, but this is interesting insofar as it's the one that IBM set light to at one of my seminars. So it's been fried like a sort of burger, really. Don't ask me why. Well, you can, but it's another long story. But and it's signed by a friend of mine, who certainly some people in America will know. His name is Bill Nelson, not Willie Nelson. This is Bill Nelson, who had a extraordinarily successful group in the 1970s called Bebop Deluxe. He, at the peak of his fame, he had sort of a string of hits, was doing very well, sort of quite a lot of cars and mansions and things like that. But he was an art student, and his heart wasn't in it, and he didn't want to make repeated singles for the record company. So true to himself, he left all that sort of wealth. So his own transformation, and that's mentioned in one of the books that I wrote, was to actually be himself, and he makes a good enough living now, producing ambient music of his own choosing. But he couldn't deal with the sex, drugs, and rock and roll. I think he might have been able to deal with some of those, but he didn't. He didn't want to sort of. I think the classic way of coping for people who are nervous in the music business is drugs. And so, he's a man that likes a pint of beer. So he left the music industry, became his own man, and he gets my full marks for authenticity, because he
Awesome.
could have just carried on producing those hits, really. So that's Bill Nelson. Anyway, let's get to the blues, shall we? So I don't have to play anything. But
let's get to it, Peter. We can't wait to listen to you.
Right. Well, this is the backing. And here we go then. We'll put a bit of guitar down. How's that?
Thank you so much, Peter. That was really awesome of you to do in front of the Global Transformation Show. Now, Peter, you probably don't know this, but I am a huge fan of guitars, because my son Michael started playing the guitar literally as a toddler. And just so you know, he is a huge fan of Fender, so that is not new to me, that brand. He does own several guitars by Fender, and I know that that's what you presented to today. Thank you so much for performing for our audience today. That's absolutely awesome. Now, Peter, I want to know if there's a message that you have out there of transformation when it comes to business in combination with music.
Drums. One thing I thought of in the shower, actually. I think I'll reach for that one, because I've written a few books where the latest one is called The Music of Business, but the one before has a more interesting title. It's called Sex, Leadership and Rock and Roll. Actually acclaimed by Tom Peters, the man that wrote In Search of Excellence, and actually one of my heroes in terms of his authenticity as a management speaker and writer. And when I was writing that book, I sort of I wanted to have on every other page a sort of like an illustration and a thought for the day, rather than just a long book. And so I had to assemble something like 200 original sort of pieces of thought about that. And I was actually in the shower when this happened, and I couldn't tell the person about it, because I thought it would have spoilt it for them. This guy from Pfizer rang me up, and he was the Senior Vice President of Research and Development worldwide. I mean, really important guy. And he said to me, Peter, he said, this is fantastic. He said, you've got this quote here. And there was a picture of a cliff, and it said, leaders need followers more than they need fans. So this is a difference between music. It said, fans follow you over a cliff, and followers will tell you before it's too late. Now, we do want people to be fans of our products and services. That's okay. But the leader that doesn't, is that people are too frightened of to tell them that they're about to make a mistake. Now, that's not the kind of leader you want. So, yeah, the quote is that leaders need followers more than fans. Fans follow you over the cliff. Followers will tell you before it's too late, was the quote. And he was saying, it's such a marvellous quote. He said, you know, and how did you think of it? And I thought, well, I couldn't really say I thought of it in the shower. So, yeah, because he went on to say, he said, and then you spoiled it later on, he said, because you mentioned Britney Spears and learning. He's obviously not a fan of Britney Spears. Yeah, they were saying the book was going really great when I was in the shower, but later on I think I made some comparison with, when I was talking about becoming a learning organisation, and I pointed out that Oops, I Did It Again clearly is a song illustrating the need not to repeat the same mistake, but to make a different choice. I believe Britney wrote the song about a relationship, though, so maybe I'm slightly deluded in my interpretation of that particular canon of word.
Well, what an interesting guy, right? This guy in Pfizer, because I've never actually heard that before. He brought up a good point between the difference of a fan and a follower, and that just made me think a little bit right now. You had me going there. You know, he did bring up something that is truly relevant, and you also explained it as it's great to have fans, and we love our fans, but they will see you go over the cliff. Now, a follower, as you said, will, you know, warn you and at least try to help you prevent that future mistake or what's about to come and happen. So I really, this is actually eye-opening for me to even hear that, because I had never heard it in that light. So it's interesting that you brought that up when I mentioned for you to give the global audience a message of transformation when it comes to business and music, because this is the first I've ever heard someone, the difference between a fan and a follower. Very, very interesting in that respect. Peter, is there anything that is there anyone out there? Because, you know, to me, you're just the master of music. You're incredible. You have truly inspired many out there in business and in music. But is there someone in particular that has truly inspired your journey, both business and music?
Well, I would probably turn back to this chap, Bill Nelson. In fact, there's a list of 10 points of transformation that I got out of him for a book. And I think I've followed his work for nearly 40 years. I'm mildly obsessed. I'm not that obsessed. I can see the wood from the tree. He has produced a few things that I don't like. What I think is the real thing about if you're going to change people will follow you if you're authentic. And I think his journey has been one of total authenticity. See, it's really easy to be authentic when everything's going well. And I think I'd mentioned that, you know, he had 6 sports cars, a mansion, all the trappings of success in 1978. And all he had to do was to keep producing the same songs. And he didn't want to. And it wasn't him. He didn't see that as him. And so I think that's really hard to be authentic when you're having to give a lot up. It doesn't have to be financial, of course, but I think leaders who are truly authentic know how to let something go that matters to them in order to be more of themselves. And the London Business School guys talk about being an authentic chameleon. So if you're going to transform, you need to be true to yourself and also challenge yourself to be different. And I think that's so hard for people. And I strongly suggest that people look up this chap, Bill Nelson. He has a website, billnelson.com, and I'm not on commission to say that. But he's also mentioned there are 12 principles for reinvention that he mentions to me, and they're in the book Sex, Leadership and Rock and Roll. actually, the page that's got those 12 things mentioned is on my website, so you don't even have to get hold of the book. I think that I've actually ripped that page out and put it up as a PDF on the website because I think it's so good. And there's also a mention of some of those principles of reinvention in the latest work that I've done as well. So Bill Nelson would be my choice.
I'm definitely going to have to check the website out. I'm very intrigued because, as you said, in order to be a leader, there really has to be a lot of authenticity when it comes to that. Be genuine and be personal as well. One of the things that I always speak of, Peter, is how it's important to be personal, even in a business environment with clients, customers, in any area of business. And I'm really enjoying the fact that you are reiterating that in this show today. And everyone needs to check him out. Go into his website and check him out because he really does provide a lot to everyone out there as to the importance, you know, of demonstrating what being authentic really is. And I think also being personal with everyone out there. People can really, you know, Peter, read the energy and really feel that. I mean, people really do know when you're being real and you're being authentic, and it does transcend to those around you, your environment, those who are working with you. And I think that's really, really important, and I'm really happy that you've brought that up today. Is there anything else that you want to let the audience know that you feel is important when it comes to transformation? Because I know you've had an incredible journey of transformation of your own. Is there anything that you want to point out in regards to that?
I think the hard thing in leading change and transformation is not starting it. It's actually keeping it going. I mean, it's the old story, perhaps, of the pioneers who first landed in sort of the east side of the States, and they thought, well, we're going to go and explore across the west and find, you know, California. And of course, when they're all disappearing on their journey, there's a lot of people all waving at them, a lot of hullabaloo and a lot of sort of effort being applied to that first move. But halfway across the desert, you know, no one's there. And I think that translates very well to business, because usually when there's a business change going on, I've been dealing with one recently in a pharmaceutical company. There is this hullabaloo at the beginning. There's usually a launch, there's, you know, seminars, and a lot of sort of time and money is usually consumed on starting the thing. But then later on, the real hard job of leaders is keeping it going, particularly when people are starting to say, is this thing we're doing, is it getting us anywhere? I did some work for a well-known company who I shouldn't name for this, but they were telling me that they'd had a sort of a huge program of transformation, and it was all based around 5 S's that I won't go any further than that. And one of them was sustain. And they were saying to me, that's the one we have the most problems with, because every week there's a new initiative. And I used to have a boss at the pharmaceutical firm, and he used to describe, you know, the problems of keeping things going around his idea of what he called initiative constipation. You know, if you've got too many things going on all the time, you know, you never finish anything. And I think smart leaders and smart companies, if they're going to transform things, they have to keep things relatively simple. And I think you can learn that from music as well, because there is a thing I sometimes do in companies to talk about simplicity, and it's the song by the famous group Deep Purple, "Smoke on the Water," which, if I just remind the listeners. It's got 4 notes in it. Never mind, you weren't counting that time. It's got 4 notes. And the person that wrote it, Richie Blackmore, was complaining because, you know, people said to him, well, it's just 4 notes. And he said, well, Beethoven did a number with 4 notes in it. And he said, you know, nobody complained to Beethoven because he's classical. But the point about it was, he said, Pete Townsend of The Who said to him, you have to keep things simple. So even if you're playing jazz, you have to put a motif at the beginning to let people know the thing has started. You may have to sort of put signals in the middle to sort of let people know that you've got halfway through. And at the end, usually repeat the motive to finish, you know, to sort of say, we're done. And I think businesses are really good at doing the beginning and not so good at the middle. And then they don't always reach the end. And because obviously a business program of change is not 3 minutes like a pop song, it's 3 years. So actually it's not quite the same as music, but it's even more important that one sustains you know, and keeps the flow. Successful companies don't fill up their agendas with thousands of initiatives. They do a few things really well and keep it simple. I think that's another important transferable lesson.
Oh, thank you so much, Peter, for sharing that and how that relates to both business and the music world as well, which is to sustain. Number one, how do you maintain that sustainability within a business and in the music industry, and also, as you said, to keep it simple, a few things that actually work, but they maintain and they are sustainable for the long run. And that's really great that you brought that up today. You know, I want to thank you, Peter, for being on the Global Transformation Show today. I know our audience has learned a lot from you, as well as I have, because I do love business, number one, and I also love music. I love entertainment. As you know, I do have a background, and I'm really supportive of those two, you know, combined. I think they work very, very well together. I want to thank you. Do you want to just play? I know I didn't ask you to do that before, but before we come to a close on the show, can you just play a little bit for us before we come to an end?
Okay, well, I was following that sort of same theme of sort of blues-inspired music. Just before I close, actually, there's a lot more resource for people to find on www.academy-of-rock.co.uk and my other website, Human Dynamics. But I know you've got that all on the details. So there's plenty of other resources to grab and get and things. And I have a free book called Punk Rock People Management, which people can have for free if they send me an email with just one word in the title, punk, because it's like 1, 2, 3, 4. We don't need more than one word. But right, to finish. Woke up this morning, server was down, and I don't know the rest of the words. That's the blues.
Thank you so much, Peter. You have literally rocked the Global Transformation Show today. What an amazing experience to have you on the show. And once again, I want you to take a few moments, Peter, to let everybody know where they can find you.
They can find me at Human Dynamics, which is www.humdyn.co.uk. They can find me at the Academy of Rock. That's where we do the sort of talks and conferences with rock music and business. That's www.academy-of-rock.co.uk. So it's Academy of Rock with hyphens. And there's plenty of stuff on there, loads of free things to download. If they want to email me to get the punk rock book, just put punk in the title and send me a message to peter@humdine.co.uk. That's Peter at HUM for mother, DYN for November.co.uk. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Fantastic, Peter. Thank you so much for being on the show today with us, also for giving back to others with your knowledge, with your inspiration, and also by allowing them to be a part of you by sharing this book with everyone out there. Everyone follow Peter. You can find him at Twitter at Academy of Rock. And before we come to a close, I want to go ahead and once again wish all of our mothers out there a happy Mother's Day. I hope you've enjoyed your day. I hope your day has been filled with happiness and love, surrounded by those that mean the most to you. Also, I want to remind all of our audience out there that I am at the pre-launch campaign of the Global Transformation Show. So I ask of everyone's support out there. I want to thank you all, from my fans to my colleagues to my worldwide supporters. You have been tremendously amazing since I initially had my first show back in January 7th of 2014. So I want to go ahead and come to a close today. I want to remind everyone out there that always about a new world, a new journey, that of global transformation. This is Connie, Avila-Von Leitner, and we will see you all next time. Thank you, everyone. Thank you so much, Peter, for joining us today.
Thank you very much, Connie.